Gymflation.
Can you rate this guy's situation?
Can't see him.
Oh.
What is wrong with you? You think this is a dad bod?
Back in the day when we talked about dad bods, this is what they meant. But George, what does that have to do with—
Shut up, bitch! Oh my god!
Now, you've probably heard of your parents saying, "Back in my day, I filled up a shopping cart with bread, fruit, meat, and paid with the $20 bill I earned from mowing lawns for the neighbors selling their house." And truth be told, they weren't lying. Prices of virtually everything have gone up since then. That's inflation. Purchasing power is the strength of your dollar in the real world. The weaker it gets, the less you can fill your shopping cart up with. So yes, inflation erodes your hard-earned income. Your 100K salary, that's pretty sick. However, when bread costs $100, textbook economics teaches inflation bad, currency bad. Reality check? It's quite the opposite. Higher inflation usually leads to central banks hiking rates, which strengthens that currency. A fun way to think of it is think of the central bank as firefighters. Inflation is the fire, and interest rates are the hose. Sometimes they blast so hard they flood the entire economy. You've probably heard about people with variable rate mortgages complaining that their bills have gone up, they've doubled, or businesses laying off employees to cut costs. That's the fire hose effect. On the contrary, lower inflation does allow the central banks to cut rates, and in turn, the currency weakens. This is usually done to stimulate the economy. This can lead into people borrowing more, spending more, and your buddy showing off his new Pokemon collection. Now, what causes inflation? Number one being supply and demand shocks. Throwing it back to the lemonade hustler kid. When he was running lower on lemonade, he jacked up the prices. We've seen the same thing with prime energy drinks, where demand exceeded supply by a ton, and other supply shocks like oil.
Huh? Oil? Who said something about oil, bitch? You cooking?
Another thing is rising wages. What do you do when your wages go up? You spend more money and you stimulate the economy. Rising wages also increase a business's expenses, leading them to cut employee hours, raise product prices to increase on their margin, or both. And lastly, money printing. During COVID, the US printed 1/3 of all of its money in history. Stimmy checks, feds cutting rates, business loans. This was a chemical reaction in a pot, and inflation numbers exploded way above the Fed's 2% target. We have multiple ways to measure inflation, the main one being CPI. This is the one that you hear about on the news. CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index. This is what you feel: rent, gas, groceries, T-Swizzle tickets. The next measure is PPI. This is what businesses feel. It stands for Producer Price Index. Lemons, cups, tables for the 5-year-old hustler. And one of the biggest measures that's not really spoken about too much is the PCE. It stands for Personal Consumption Expenditures. It's basically the Fed's favorite inflation report. It tracks what people actually spend money on, not just the sticker prices like CPI does. It adjusts for how consumers change their habits. It's like switching from steak to chicken when prices rise. So it gives a smoother, more realistic picture about inflation. In short, CPI tells you what's getting expensive, and PCE tells you how people are coping with it. This one's the one that the Fed uses the most. Whenever you hear about the 2% rate, that's what they're talking about. And lastly, it's wages and spending, which is your hint at demand pressure. To sum it up, inflation is the villain that eats your purchasing power. And as traders, we track it because the central banks panic about it.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
When you nail these trends, you're basically front-running the Fed's next move.